My stepfather erased me from all family photos after Mom died because I reminded him of his failure. His shock was incredible when I showed up to his retirement party. The notification came while I was buying groceries. A tagged photo on Instagram. My cousin Rebecca had posted throwback pictures from some family gathering I wasn't invited to, and there was Greg, my stepfather, smiling with his arm around a teenage girl I'd never seen before. The caption read, "So grateful for family. Dad's retirement countdown begins." The girl wore a dress identical to one Mom had bought for my younger sister Olivia years ago. Same color, same style, even the same ugly floral pattern. I stood in the cereal aisle staring at my phone for 10 minutes while other shoppers pushed past me. The girl looked nothing like Olivia. She was blonde where my sister had dark hair, taller, different face entirely, but she stood in my spot, in my sister's spot, in photos taken at Greg's house, the house where I'd lived from age 10 until Mom died 3 years ago. My hands started shaking when I scrolled through Rebecca's other posts. More photos, different occasions, birthday parties, holiday dinners, summer barbecues, all featuring this stranger girl, and occasionally a younger boy I also didn't recognize, both of them positioned as Greg's children in every caption, every single mention, as if Olivia and I had never existed, as if 14 years of family dinners and Christmas mornings and summer vacations had been erased and replaced with these strangers. I reverse image searched the girl's face right there between the Cheerios and the granola. The results loaded slowly. My internet connection was terrible inside the store. Then dozens of hits appeared. Professional modeling photos, a portfolio site. Her real name was Madison Hartley, 20 years old, professional family model. Her bio listed her specialty as corporate family photography and lifestyle branding. The boy appeared on a different site. Trevor Knox, 17, same professional category. I bought my groceries on autopilot and drove home in a daze. My apartment was small and dark and smelled like the Thai food I'd burned 2 nights ago. Nothing like the bedroom I'd had at Greg's house before Mom got sick, before everything changed, before he started looking at me like I was a walking reminder of his biggest failure. I dumped the grocery bags on my kitchen counter and opened my laptop. The search terms felt insane as I typed them. Family branding agency, professional family models, lifestyle photography services. But the results were real. Dozens of companies offering exactly what the search suggested. Agencies that provided actors to pose as family members for social media, corporate events, personal branding. The websites looked professional and legitimate, with testimonials and pricing tiers and FAQ sections explaining their services. One site called Perfect Family Co. had a whole gallery of available models, sorted by age, ethnicity, and family role. You could filter by mother, father, child, grandparent. Each profile listed their rates and specialties. Madison's profile was there. $800 per day for photo shoots, $1,200 for events, $12,500 for weekend family packages. Trevor's rates were slightly lower. The site promised discretion, professionalism, and authentic-looking family dynamics for clients who needed to present a certain image. I clicked through the testimonials. Business executives who needed family photos for their office, divorced parents who wanted to appear stable for custody evaluations, politicians building their public image, and apparently, stepfathers who wanted to erase their actual stepchildren and replace them with a more photogenic version. I felt sick reading it. This wasn't just Greg being cruel or petty after Mom's death. This was systematic replacement. He'd hired professionals to create an alternate reality where Olivia and I had never been part of his life, where his marriage to Mom had produced different, better children, children who looked the way he wanted, who didn't remind him that Mom had chosen him second after our biological father left, children who weren't living evidence of his role as a replacement parent. I called Olivia. She was in college 3 states away, studying engineering and trying to build a life that didn't involve thinking about Greg every day. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice cheerful until she heard my tone. When I told her what I'd found, the silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "Send me the links." Her voice was flat, empty, the same voice she'd used at Mom's funeral when Greg stood at the podium and talked about his wonderful wife, without mentioning that she'd had 2 children who loved her desperately. That night, Olivia called me back after going through everything I'd sent. She'd found more than I had. Greg's Facebook page was full of posts about his son and daughter, with Madison and Trevor featured prominently. His LinkedIn profile mentioned being a devoted father of 2. His company bio on the law firm website included a paragraph about balancing his demanding career with family time, complete with a professional photo of him with the fake kids. Every single platform, every single profile. We'd been completely erased and replaced. Olivia's voice cracked when she said, "He's telling people they're his real kids. I found a post where someone congratulated him on his daughter's graduation, and he thanked them. Madison didn't graduate anything. She's a model he hired. I asked if she'd known about any of this. She hadn't. We'd both assumed Greg had just removed us from his social media after Mom died. Painful, but understandable given how much we looked like her. But this was different. This was active replacement. This was hiring actors to fill the spaces we'd left behind. The next morning, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of every post featuring Madison and Trevor, downloads of their modeling portfolios, archives of Greg's social media going back 3 years, showing the exact moment the replacement began, 2 weeks after Mom's funeral. That's when the first photo appeared. Greg and Madison at a restaurant, her smiling at the camera while he looked proud. The caption said, "Dinner with my daughter. So blessed." I remembered that night. I'd called him to talk about Mom's life insurance paperwork. He'd said he was too busy to talk, too busy staging fake family dinners with a woman he was paying to pretend to be his child. I found receipts. Greg wasn't careful about his digital footprint. His Venmo was public, showing monthly payments to Perfect Family Co., $4,000 per month for the past 3 years. $144,000 total spent on maintaining his fake family. I did the math in my head. That money could have paid for Olivia's entire college tuition, could have helped me with my student loans, could have been put toward literally anything except manufacturing a false reality. But Greg had chosen to spend it on professional actors who would smile on command and never remind him of his dead wife. I reached out to Madison directly through her modeling profile contact form, kept it simple, asked if she'd done work for a client named Greg Whitmore, offered to pay her standard consultation fee for 30 minutes of her time. She responded within 2 hours. Professional and friendly. Yes, she'd worked with Greg for nearly 3 years. Long-term contract. One of her most consistent clients. She suggested we meet at a coffee shop downtown. She probably thought I was a potential client. When I showed up, she recognized something was wrong immediately. I looked too much like the photos Greg had shown her of his previous life before his reinvention. That's what he'd called it, his reinvention. Madison sat across from me in the coffee shop, her expression shifting from professional politeness to genuine discomfort as I explained who I was. She'd known Greg had a past. All her clients did. That was the point of hiring family models. But she hadn't known the details. Hadn't known about Mom's death or the fact that Greg had real children he was actively erasing. She'd thought he was a divorced businessman who wanted better family photos for his social media presence. Something corporate and image-focused, but not cruel. Not this. She opened her phone and showed me the contract, detailed and specific. Greg had paid for bi-weekly photo sessions, monthly event appearances, quarterly weekend packages where Madison and Trevor would stay at his house and play the role of his children for extended periods. The contract included specific instructions about what to wear, how to pose, what to say if anyone asked questions. There was even a script for common scenarios. If someone asked about their mother, they were supposed to say she'd passed away years ago and they preferred not to discuss it. True enough to be believable, vague enough to avoid details. Madison said she'd felt uncomfortable about 6 months into the contract when Greg started asking her to recreate specific photos. He'd show her old pictures and ask her to stand in the same spot, wear similar clothes, mimic the same poses. She'd thought it was odd, but not necessarily sinister. Some clients wanted consistency in their branding. But now, seeing my face and hearing the real story, she understood what he'd been doing. He was replacing actual memories, overwriting history, creating a visual record where his stepchildren had never existed, and these hired models had always been his family. Trevor appeared at the coffee shop halfway through our conversation. Madison had texted him to come. He was younger than his photos suggested. 17, but looked 15. Nervous energy and acne he covered with makeup for the professional shots. He sat down and listened to everything, his expression darkening. When I finished explaining, he said, he made me call him Dad during the weekend packages. Said it added authenticity if neighbors overheard us. The casual cruelty of it hit me hard. Greg had hired a teenage boy to call him Dad, while his actual stepson lived in a crappy apartment across town, working 2 jobs to afford rent and student loan payments. Trevor continued talking, his voice getting quieter. Greg had introduced them to his colleagues at work events, brought them to company picnics and holiday parties. Trevor had been to Greg's office Christmas party for the past 2 years, wearing a suit Greg bought him and smiling for photos with the senior partners, people who'd met me before Mom died, people who'd known I existed. They'd seen Trevor and either not recognized the substitution or not cared enough to question it. Madison said the strangest part was how normal Greg acted during their sessions. He wasn't creepy or inappropriate. He was just distant and methodical. He'd direct the photos like a film director, adjusting angles and expressions until everything looked perfect. Then he'd pay them, thank them professionally, and they'd leave. No emotional connection, no pretense of actual relationship beyond the transactional. She'd worked with other clients who got too invested, who started treating their hired family members like real relatives. Greg never did. He kept it businesslike and cold, which somehow made it worse. It meant he knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't delusion or grief-driven fantasy. This was calculated image management. I asked if they'd be willing to help me expose what Greg had been doing. Madison and Trevor exchanged glances. There was risk for them. Breaking client confidentiality could damage their reputation in a small industry. But Madison said yes, almost immediately. What Greg was doing went beyond normal client services. It was exploitative and disturbing. Trevor agreed, though he looked more nervous about it. They both understood that staying silent would make them complicit in something cruel. That night, I created a folder with everything I'd collected. screenshots of Greg's social media posts featuring Madison and Trevor, paired with their actual modeling portfolios showing their real names and professional categories, copies of Venmo receipts showing payments to Perfect Family Co., photos of me and Olivia from before Mom died, proving we existed and weren't just some story I'd invented. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Greg had spent 3 years and $144,000 building a fake family to replace us. I sent the folder to Rebecca with a simple message asking if she'd known the kids in her photos weren't actually Greg's children. She called me within 10 minutes, her voice high and shocked. She'd had no idea. Greg had introduced Madison as his daughter at family events. Rebecca had met her 3 times. They'd had conversations about college and career plans. Madison had played the role perfectly because that's what she'd been paid to do. Rebecca said other relatives had commented on how different Madison looked from me, but Greg had laughed it off, saying she took after his side of the family. People had accepted it because why would anyone question something so bizarre? Who would assume someone was hiring professional models to fake their family? The explanation was too weird to occur to anyone, so they'd just accepted the surface reality and moved on. Rebecca was furious, not just at Greg, but at herself for not seeing it. She started calling other family members. Within 2 hours, my phone was exploding with messages. Aunts, uncles, cousins who'd all met Madison and Trevor at various family functions. All of them had believed the performance. My uncle Dennis, Mom's brother, called me directly. His voice was shaking with rage. He said he'd given Madison a birthday card with $50 inside at Greg's 4th of July barbecue last summer. He'd hugged her and told her how proud Mom would be of the young woman she'd become. The memory made him feel sick now. He'd been manipulated into showing affection to a stranger while Greg watched and smiled, knowing the entire interaction was built on lies. Dennis wanted to drive to Greg's house immediately and confront him. I told him to wait. We needed to do this right. Confronting Greg privately would give him a chance to spin the story, to claim it was a misunderstanding or a coping mechanism for grief. We needed public exposure. We needed his colleagues and friends and everyone who'd seen those photos to understand what he'd actually done, because this wasn't just about me and Olivia being erased from family photos. It was about Greg constructing an elaborate lie and forcing dozens of people to participate without their knowledge. Everyone who'd liked or commented on his posts. Everyone who'd met Madison and Trevor at events. Everyone who'd congratulated him on his beautiful family. They'd all been unwitting actors in his manufactured reality. I spent the next week gathering more evidence. I found the business that had taken Greg's professional family photo, the one on his law firm website, called them pretending to be a potential client interested in similar services. The photographer confirmed they'd worked with Perfect Family Co. before. It was becoming more common, he said. People wanting their professional image to include family elements without the complications of actual family dynamics. He didn't see anything wrong with it. Just another service in the age of personal branding. I recorded the conversation. I found Greg's retirement party information through his law firm's public events page. Big celebration planned at an upscale hotel downtown. 300 guests. Cocktail hour followed by dinner and speeches. The firm's managing partners would be there. Judges Greg had worked with. Clients, colleagues, all the people he'd spent 30 years building relationships with. The event page included a note saying family was welcome and encouraged. I wondered if Greg had already hired Madison and Trevor to attend, if he planned to parade his fake children in front of everyone one last time before retiring to whatever life he'd imagined for himself, a life where his failure as a stepfather didn't exist because the stepchildren themselves had been edited out of history. Olivia flew in 4 days before the retirement party. We met at my apartment and went through everything together. She'd been doing her own research. Found online forums for children of remarried parents discussing similar experiences. Not the hired models part, that seemed unique to Greg, but the erasure. The way step-parents sometimes tried to rewrite history after their spouse died, removing evidence of the stepchildren's existence because it complicated their narrative. One woman shared how her stepfather had literally painted over her face in family portraits hanging in his house. Another described finding all her childhood photos in a dumpster. The cruelty varied, but the pattern was the same. Stepchildren as inconvenient reminders of previous lives. Evidence of loss and change that some people would rather eliminate than integrate. Olivia had also found something I'd missed. Greg's dating profiles. He was on 3 different apps, all with carefully curated photos, showing him as a successful, active, family-oriented professional. Madison and Trevor appeared in several pictures. Beach vacations, hiking trips, casual dinners, all staged, all purchased. His bio mentioned being a devoted father whose children were his greatest pride. Women had responded. Olivia had created a fake profile and matched with him to see the full extent of his deception. He told her his daughter was studying pre-med and his son was a talented athlete. Complete fabrications built on rented people. The night before the retirement party, Madison and Trevor met us at a restaurant to finalize the plan. They'd both taken the day off from other commitments. Madison had even turned down a $2,000 job to be available. She said what Greg had done kept bothering her. She'd talked to other models in the family branding industry, and while most of their work was innocuous, corporate image stuff, or divorced parents trying to look stable, Some had experienced similar situations, clients using their services to erase real families, to create false histories. The industry had no ethical guidelines, no oversight, just transactions between people with money and people willing to play, pretend. Trevor was quieter but equally committed. He'd been bothered by the dad thing from the start. His own father had died when he was 12. Having Greg make him use that word for money had felt like a betrayal of his real father's memory. He hadn't fully processed those feelings until I showed up and gave context to what he'd been participating in. Now he wanted to make it right, or as right as possible given the circumstances. The plan was simple. We'd all attend the retirement party. Madison and Trevor would arrive first, exactly as Greg expected. They'd take their places as his devoted children, smiling for pre-event photos and greeting guests. Then Olivia and I would show up. We'd walk in together, dressed well, looking like we belonged. We'd approach Greg during the cocktail hour, before the formal program started when the room was full, but not yet seated. We'd have the confrontation in public, where witnesses could see and hear everything, where Greg couldn't control the narrative or retreat into privacy. Madison and Trevor would confirm their roles as hired models. We'd present the evidence, the receipts and contracts and before and after photos, and we'd let everyone there understand what Greg had done. The hotel ballroom was elegant and expensive. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a bar set up in one corner, and a small stage at the front for speeches. Olivia and I arrived 30 minutes into the cocktail hour. The room was already crowded with Greg's professional network. We stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the crowd. I spotted Greg immediately. He was near the bar, talking to a group of older men in expensive suits. Senior partners from his firm, probably. Madison stood beside him, playing her role perfectly, laughing at appropriate moments, touching his arm affectionately. Trevor was a few feet away, talking to someone else but still within Greg's orbit. The perfect fake family, performing for the last time. Olivia grabbed my hand. Her palm was sweating. Mine too. We'd talked through this moment dozens of times, but actually doing it felt surreal. Walking across that ballroom toward the man who'd raised us for years, who'd been present at every important moment of our adolescence, who'd held Mom's hand while she died, and then immediately began erasing us from existence. We moved through the crowd. A few people glanced at us but didn't recognize us. Why would they? As far as they knew, Greg's children were already here. The blonde girl in the blue dress and the athletic-looking teenage boy. Not the dark-haired 26-year-old man in the gray suit, or the young woman beside him with Mom's eyes and Greg's last name on her student ID. We reached Greg's group just as he finished a story. Everyone was laughing. Madison saw us first. Her expression flickered, just for a second. Recognition and something like relief. She'd been waiting for this moment, knowing it was coming, but not exactly when. Greg followed her gaze, turned toward us. The laughter died. His face went through several expressions in rapid sequence. Confusion at seeing strangers approach, then recognition, then something harder to define. Fear, maybe, or calculation. His mind working through scenarios, trying to figure out what we wanted and how much damage we could do. I spoke first, loud enough that the people around us could hear. "Hello, Greg. Been a while?" He recovered quickly. That lawyer training. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Daniel? Olivia? What a surprise. I didn't know you were coming." His tone was carefully neutral. Polite, but not warm. Acknowledging our presence while minimizing it. Treating us like distant acquaintances who'd shown up unexpectedly, not the children he'd raised for over a decade. Olivia stepped forward. "We wanted to celebrate your retirement. After all, you were our stepfather for 14 years. Raised us after our dad left. Married our mom. Lived with us until she died. Seems appropriate that we'd be here." Her voice carried. People were turning to look now. The mention of us being his stepchildren was causing visible confusion. Heads turning toward Madison and Trevor, then back to us, trying to reconcile the contradiction. Greg's smile tightened. "Of course. I appreciate you coming. Madison, Trevor, these are my former stepchildren. Daniel and Olivia." The way he said former was deliberate, creating distance, suggesting our relationship had expired along with Mom's life. Madison didn't play along. She looked at Greg steadily and said, "Actually, I'm not your daughter. My name is Madison Hartley. I'm a professional family model. You hired me through Perfect Family Co. 3 years ago to pose as your child for photographs and events." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background music seemed too loud. People stared. Greg's face went pale, then red. He opened his mouth but nothing came out. Trevor stepped forward too. "I'm Trevor Knox, also a hired model. Mr. Whitmore has been paying us $4,000 per month to pretend to be his children. We've attended numerous events in that capacity, including several at this firm." His voice shook slightly, but he kept going. "We didn't know until recently that he had actual children he was replacing. We thought we were just helping with his professional image. When Daniel contacted us and explained the situation, we agreed to help expose what's really been happening." I pulled out my phone, started showing people nearby the folder I'd prepared. Screenshots of Greg's social media posts with Madison and Trevor, paired with their modeling portfolios, Venmo receipts, the contract from Perfect Family Co., photos of me and Olivia with Mom and Greg from years ago, proving we existed and weren't fabricating our relationship to him. People crowded around to look. Someone took my phone and started scrolling through themselves. Gasps and muttered conversations. One of the senior partners from Greg's firm pushed forward, distinguished-looking man in his 60s. I recognized him from the firm website. Managing partner. He looked at the evidence on my phone, then at Greg. Is this true? You hired actors to pose as your family? Greg finally found his voice. This is a private matter, family business. It has nothing to do with my career or my work at this firm. But the managing partner wasn't having it. You've brought these actors to firm events for 3 years, introduced them to clients, to judges. You've used them as part of your professional image. That makes it very much our business, especially if you've been misleading people about your personal life in ways that affect your credibility. Other people were pulling out their phones now, searching for Greg's social media, finding the posts with Madison and Trevor, comparing them to the evidence I was showing. The reality was unavoidable and undeniable. Greg had constructed an elaborate deception and maintained it for years, involving dozens of unwitting participants. A woman I didn't recognize spoke up. I'm a family law attorney. I've worked with Greg on several custody cases. He's represented himself as an experienced parent with 2 well-adjusted children. I've seen photos of these kids in his office. Was everything he told me about parenting experience a lie? Greg tried to respond, but she kept talking. How many cases did you work on using fraudulent personal credentials? How many times did you present yourself as someone you're not to gain clients' trust? Rebecca appeared from somewhere in the crowd. She'd been invited to the party as family. Now she stood beside me and Olivia, making our relationship to Greg undeniable. These are my cousins, she said loudly. Their mother was my aunt. Greg married her when Daniel was 10 and Olivia was 6. He raised them. He was at their school events. He walked Olivia down the aisle at her 8th grade graduation because her real father wasn't there. He was their parent in every meaningful way until their mother died, and then he erased them and hired these actors to replace them. She turned to Greg, her voice shaking with anger. I met Madison at your house last summer. I gave her a birthday card. You let me believe she was your daughter. You let all of us believe it. How sick do you have to be to do something like that? Greg's face was deep red now. You don't understand. When Jennifer died, everything reminded me of her. Daniel and Olivia, they looked like her, sounded like her. Every time I saw them, I saw my failure. My failure to save her. My failure to be what she needed. I couldn't live with that constant reminder. I needed a fresh start. The confession came out desperate and rushed. He was trying to explain, to make people understand his reasoning, but the words only made it worse. Olivia's voice cut through sharp and cold. So you hired actors to replace us, spent $144,000 over 3 years to create a fake family, rather than deal with your grief like a normal person. You introduced these strangers to our relatives, made them call you dad, posted hundreds of photos claiming they were your children, while your actual stepchildren struggled to pay rent and tuition because you cut us off financially the moment mom was buried. She pulled out her phone and showed her own evidence. Student loan statements, debt collection notices, her meager graduate student stipend. I'm eating ramen for dinner most nights while you spend thousands of dollars per month on Instagram content. Daniel works 2 jobs to afford his apartment. We both loved mom. We both grieved. But we didn't have the luxury of hiring replacement family members to make ourselves feel better. The managing partner pulled Greg aside, spoke to him in low, urgent tones. I couldn't hear everything, but phrases carried. Ethical violations, client trust, firm reputation. Greg was arguing back, but weakly. His carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. People were leaving the party. Not everyone, but enough that the exodus was noticeable. Guests who'd come to celebrate were instead witnessing something ugly and uncomfortable. They collected their coats and left with muttered excuses. Others stayed, fascinated by the drama or too invested in Greg's downfall to leave before seeing how it ended. Madison approached Olivia and me. Tears were running down her face, ruining her professionally applied makeup. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what this was really about. I thought I was just helping someone with their image. I didn't understand I was helping erase real people. Olivia hugged her, actually hugged the woman who'd been hired to replace her, because Madison was a victim in this too. A young woman trying to make money from modeling who'd been manipulated into participating in something cruel without understanding the full context. Trevor stood nearby, looking miserable and young. He kept apologizing under his breath. I told them both it wasn't their fault. They'd been hired to do a job. They'd had no reason to question their client's motives. The blame sat entirely with Greg, who'd conceived and funded this entire operation, who'd looked at his grieving stepchildren and decided they were problems to be eliminated, rather than people to be supported. Greg's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then his face went gray. When he hung up, he looked at the managing partner. That was Henry from the ethics board. Someone already called them. They want me to come in for a meeting next week. The managing partner nodded. I imagine they do. I imagine we'll be having our own conversations about this. Your retirement party is over, Greg. I think you should leave. The ballroom was half empty now. The people remaining were mostly gawkers, or people personally invested in seeing Greg face consequences. Family members. Colleagues who'd suspected something was off about his perfect family photos. A few friends of mom's who'd come to support us, once they understood what was happening. Greg looked around at the ruins of his celebration, at the hotel staff standing awkwardly near the door, at Madison and Trevor, who'd been his paid family and were now witnesses to his deception, at Olivia and me, the children he'd tried to erase. He didn't apologize, didn't try to explain further. He just walked out, shoulders hunched, looking smaller and older than he had when we'd arrived. Rebecca hugged us both. Other relatives came forward, Mom's friends, people who'd known us as children and lost touch after she died. They'd assumed Greg had kept us close. Learning the truth was shocking. Several people offered help, job connections, places to stay if we needed them, practical support from people who felt guilty for not noticing sooner. Madison gave us her contact information, said if we needed her to testify to anything, make any statements, she would. Trevor did the same. They both seemed desperate to make amends for their unknowing participation. I told them we'd likely need their statements if Greg's firm or the bar association investigated. They both agreed immediately. The hotel manager approached and asked if we wanted to continue with the dinner portion of the event. The food was prepared. Some guests were still here. Olivia looked at me. I looked at the remaining people in the ballroom. Extended family, Mom's friends, people who'd cared about us and been cut off by Greg's erasure campaign. I told the manager yes, we'd have dinner. A celebration not of Greg's retirement, but of truth finally coming out, of fake families being exposed and real relationships being acknowledged. The meal was strange and somber, but not unpleasant. People shared memories of Mom, asked us about our lives now, made genuine efforts to reconnect. Madison and Trevor stayed too. They seemed uncertain whether they should, but we insisted. They'd been part of this story whether they wanted to be or not. They deserved to see how it ended. Over the next week, the story spread. Not nationally viral, but locally explosive. Greg's law firm announced he was retiring immediately, effective the day of the party. No gold watch, no plaque, no celebration of his 30-year career. Just a brief statement about his departure and the firm's commitment to ethical standards. The Bar Association opened an investigation. Madison and Trevor provided sworn statements about their work for Greg. I testified about the erasure and replacement. Olivia submitted evidence of the financial abandonment that had started the day after Mom's funeral. Other family models came forward. Not many, maybe a dozen total, but enough to show that Perfect Family Co. and similar services had been involved in other erasure situations. Parents hiding their actual children while presenting manufactured ones. The industry had operated in an ethical gray zone, and Greg's exposure forced some uncomfortable questions about what services should be legal versus what was technically allowed but morally reprehensible. Perfect Family Co. shut down 3 months later. Madison and Trevor both left the family modeling industry entirely. Madison went back to school. Trevor focused on his regular teenage life. They'd both been traumatized by understanding how their work had been used. Greg lost his license to practice law. The Bar Association found that his misrepresentation of his family situation constituted ethical violations, particularly in cases where he'd used his supposed parenting experience to gain clients' trust. The ruling was detailed and harsh, citing not just the deception, but the systematic nature of it and his willingness to involve others unknowingly in his fraud. He appealed. Lost. Olivia and I didn't attend any of the hearings. We'd said what we needed to say at the retirement party. The rest was just procedural consequence. We'd already gotten what we came for. The truth acknowledged publicly. Greg's manufactured reality destroyed. Our existence confirmed and validated in front of everyone who'd been shown the fake version of his life. I still have the folder of evidence on my phone. I look through it sometimes, not because I enjoy reliving the situation, but because it reminds me that what happened was real, that I didn't imagine Greg's cruelty or overreact to normal grief-driven distance. He spent $144,000 and 3 years creating an alternate reality where Olivia and I never existed. That level of deliberate erasure requires documentation, requires proof, because it's so bizarre that without evidence, people struggle to believe it happened. Madison and I get coffee occasionally. We have a strange friendship born from trauma and manipulation. She understands what it's like to be used as a tool in someone else's psychological warfare. I understand what it's like to be erased and replaced. We compare notes on rebuilding our lives after Greg, after learning that family can be a performance purchased by the hour, and that some people would rather pay for comfortable lies than face uncomfortable truths. Olivia graduated with her engineering degree. She got a job at a firm 3,000 miles from Greg's city. She needed that distance, needed to build a life somewhere that held no memories of him or Mom or the years we spent trying to be good enough stepchildren to earn his continued care. She calls me every week. We talk about normal things now, work, dating, student loans. We rarely mention Greg. Greg himself disappeared from public life. I heard through Rebecca that he moved to another state, somewhere smaller, somewhere his reputation hadn't followed. He's not practicing law, probably can't, without a license. I don't know what he does now and don't particularly care. He's not my father. He was barely my stepfather after Mom died. He's just a cautionary tale about what happens when someone values image over reality so completely that they're willing to hire actors to replace their actual family. At Mom's grave last month, I found fresh flowers. Someone else had been there recently. I don't know if it was Greg. Part of me hopes it wasn't, because he doesn't deserve to claim grief for a woman whose children he erased the moment she couldn't stop him anymore. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.